The views and opinions on the Craig L. Hayes Show do not necessarily reflect those of Westgate Resorts, ownership, or management. And now, on with the show.
Welcome back to It's Showtime, the Craig L. Hayes Show.
All right, everybody, welcome. We're still here at the Elvis Presley dressing room at the Westgate Resort in the International Theater in Las Vegas. And we're going to wrap up this interview on this last episode with Ed Johnson. We're going to maybe tell some war stories and some of the things that we've done here. And you got two audio guys here talking about stuff. So in between these things, we've been talking all kinds of crazy stuff that goes on. Let's tell a couple stories. Why don't you give a couple of stories from a couple of different shows and some ones that you really liked? And, you know, like I tell people, PG-13.
Yeah, well, there was the one I was telling you about, Friday night concerts we used to have here. The group Kansas came in and was mixing. They have their own production and their own people that do that. We were just basically babysitting them and making sure they didn't blow up our gear. And I was at front of house, and the show was about to start, and the gentleman looked at me and said, "Where's my ice chest of beer?" And I said, "Well, you're not going to get an ice chest of beer. That's a Hilton policy. There's no drinks allowed in the mix booth." And he said, "Oh, no, the band won't perform if I don't get my beer." And I'm like, well, okay. So I called stage management. They came out there. There was a discussion. They left. And the way it seemed like with me in this discussion is that it wasn't going to happen. They weren't going to be bringing beer out there. And sure enough, the show didn't start on time. 10, 15 minutes later, they must have went and talked to the artist, because all of a sudden an ice chest full of the Heineken beer showed up with a can opener. And yeah, he was pretty funny. He says, "Okay, now we can start the show." He opened up the ice chest, popped a beer, guzzled a beer, and said, "We can start now."
You know, the one I remember, would you hear when we did REO Speedwagon the first time?
I don't think I was here for REO Speedwagon.
Yeah. Well, the funny part was they're getting ready to getting close to time. So I go down just to let them know we're getting close. And they're like, "Where's our stuff?" I was like, what stuff are you talking about? I don't know what you're referring to. And they said, coffee and donuts. It's in our rider that we have coffee and donuts before we perform. They go, it used to be booze and cocaine, but now it's just coffee and
donuts.
And donuts. And they were serious. It was like, and I had to call up Ed McDonald and say, hey, they're wondering where their coffee and donuts are, because they don't perform unless they have their coffee and donuts before they go on stage. And the same thing, a few minutes later, all of a sudden you see this, from room service, all these donuts come down with coffee, in 100 miles an hour trying to get down there so they get the show on. And it's like, isn't that funny?
It's amazing. We've all heard about the Van Halen story and M&M's, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, it is true. So some of the funnier ones is, for example, Jay Leno. I've worked with him several times at conventions, and in his dressing room, he wants car magazines, hot rod magazines, all the latest current hot rod. And I remember him.
I can see that.
He was upset because they weren't the current issues. Like, in other words, they had gone to the store and bought them, but there was, I guess we were at the beginning of the month, and he wanted the new March episodes rather than the old the month before. I've already seen all these. I remember. We talk about. Sometimes people get very comfortable mixing with bands, mixers, and people with their band. They've been with them for a long time and feel like they can do almost anything they want, and pretty much they almost can. But I remember working for NAB Radio doing a show in Chicago, and I was really excited. It was a group that I really wanted to see, which was Collective Soul. And they were going to perform for us for, a full 40-minute show or 30-minute show, whatever it was. And I had talked to their engineers, and I had to make sure I had certain speakers and certain microphones and certain things that they wanted. I had to order special consoles for them rather than what I usually used for my front of house, so that it would be, on the side, their sideboards and stuff, make sure I got exactly what they want. And they actually sent me the show files of their tour of, digital consoles. They'd send me the show files of their setups and their layouts and their band plots and all that stuff. And the day of the show, we're loading in, and this new guy walks in. When I say new guy, he wasn't the guy I'd been talking to on the phone for the last month. All of a sudden, I'm like, he goes, "Hi, my name is such and such." And I said, I said to him, did you want the stage plot or any of the? I have your console already loaded up with the file on the 5Ds we were using. He's like, you have the files, and I'm like, yeah. And he goes, and then he explains to me that he just got hired like this last week because the last front of house and monitor engineer prior to him were drinking on the job, and then the band threatened to fire them, and they zeroed out their consoles and left with the files.
Oh my heavens! So you had the backups basically.
Well, and the guy had already done 2 shows because I guess they were on tour. He had already done 2 shows and was trying to make it up, and it was a symphony. It was a symphony layout.
Oh man!
The show that they were doing for us didn't require a symphony, but it was just the band. But it had all of it. And when I gave him that, the guy was so excited. He gave me a $20, which isn't a lot, but he gave me a $20 bill and bought me dinner that night. So
Wow,
so it's kind of a funny story.
that is so cool that happened. That's nice.
Yeah, and with working at X Games, I've seen so many fun things happening with athletes, off premises, and gosh, like I said, I did also a lot with Travis Pastrana. I don't think he ever knew my name, but he recognized me all the time and would ask me how things are going to go for tonight or what I was doing. But I don't think he really knew my name, but he definitely recognized me after, 10 or 12 different shows with him and stuff. And I'm trying to think of all the different stuff that we've done over the years. I remember having console failures on shows where you're mixing a show and all of a sudden, you kick the power supply by accident and it shuts off, or there's a power glitch and everything goes awry. We had one of those here at Starlight Express where we had all this digital gear and the power hit and every single device we had reset back to factory zeros. And we had, back in those days, it wasn't like you just pushed memory recall. No, you had to pull out a book and look at the book, and we would write down each device. We'd draw a picture of what the settings were for each device, what it was, and the pages and menus within it. So, the book was like a Bible. It was, thick. It's like, 6 inches thick over all the gear. And I remember me and George going through the book as fast as we could in 15 minutes to get things at least presentable enough to where we could do a show where the audience didn't know so much that things were awry.
Yeah.
And so, there's plenty of war stories like that.
Yeah, it's I always found doing sound, a lot of people never realized that I was actually a head audio in showrooms before I became here head carpenter. And it's like, well, everyone's going to make mistakes. You're going to do something wrong, but it's not that you did something wrong. It's how fast did you get back in the game and recover. And that's a prime example. Look at that book you had.
Well, yeah.
Thank heavens you had that book.
Oh, well, it was forced on us by the Mick Potter, the audio designer, that we document everything. And he actually came in every 6 months or so. And as we were doing stuff, the production engineer would change things, and he would make sure that we always updated our book, And even later, I don't even think phones were out back then where we could take a picture of the things like you can nowadays. Nowadays, a lot of times I just take pictures of the settings.
Yeah, we're still on beepers or brick telephones. Those brick,
It was
the big
beepers.
bricks, yeah.
It was
beepers with and then
pagers.
some people that wanted to go spend the extra money had the big brick, cell phone things.
Yeah, I mean, there's many times I've had it happen, not necessarily to me, where like a lot of times when I mix these corporate shows and we have these big bands come in, like that Collective Soul story I was telling you, or any of the other wonderful bands that I've worked alongside, I have my own console and I'm mixing the production, which is the video playback, people talking at mics, the panels of people coming out, all that sort of stuff. But when it comes to the entertainment, we have a special console off to the side of me that's the requested console for the house engineer for the band and their own monitor engineer. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen stories where those guys have had issues where all of a sudden we're in one song and all of a sudden, the whole thing goes out. I remember a fun story at X Games. We were doing Blink 182 and we were doing them outside. And I had to order a special Digico console in Austin for this gentleman who was going to mix front of house, and they had one for for monitors. But we had, oh my gosh, we had hellacious rain that week. And even though I had a tarp over the console and, a pop-up tent over the mix position, somehow it got wet and it went south. So when they were ready to go play, I mean, just 5 minutes before they were ready to play, his console went dead and was not coming back. It was not coming back. It got to the point where we were getting ready to go run across the venue and grab a console of not of their choice, and we're going to bring it over and possibly try to hook it up and make it work, where I finally just said to him, I said, how's the monitor console? And the guy's like, my monitor console didn't take that hit. And I said, well, just dial up some kind of a mix off your monitors for the left-right speakers, and it's 2 songs, that they were doing, and just do that. And so the front of house guy says, well, that might work. And they went back to the monitor position, and he dialed up a left-right mix off of his monitor mix, and they just did 2 songs real quick. So, these are things that happen that the show must go on, as they say.
Exactly.
And, I'll tell you, more so than in audio, you're in charge of intercom as well. And the most important thing about any large production show, Broadway show, corporate show, and even sports-related television broadcasting shows is intercom. The most stressful position is intercom because nobody can talk to each other. Nothing gets done. There are cues to be called. There are things to be said that make the whole thing work. And if that person or those systems don't work or they're down, everybody comes to a standstill, So that's always been, many times I've seen that happen on shows and stuff. And that's really the most crucial part of audio, is really understanding those systems and making them fail safe. Because I've done shows where the power went out on video and lighting when they were building the Allegiant Stadium Arena, and I was doing a show for some company out of London over at the Mandalay Bay. And for some reason, I hooked my power up to a different source than those guys did because of ground problems. And when it happened, the guys were on stage talking. The president's up there doing whatever he's doing. The lights, the video, it all went dead. But the intercom and my audio system stayed up. And so, of course, the guy stopped his speech because he had no lights on there. But we could all talk about what happened, and it took us only a matter of 10 or 15 minutes to get things sorted. But that was one of those ones where I was thankful that I had switched to different power. That's one of those things. Even early on in my career, when I used to work at Burns Audio and worked some of the largest award shows, Grammys, American Music Awards, Academy Awards, People's Choice, those shows, we always tied ourselves into the same power as the TV trucks. The lighting department, the lights on the stage, the video department, they're going off the regular service that the theater provides. But no, when it came to audio, we always tied in with the trucks. And the reason for that is, if the audio goes down, the power goes down for us, it's going down for the TV trucks. And guess what? That's what's being broadcast. So guess what? Everybody's dead at that point.
At that point, it doesn't matter at that point. Yeah.
So I remember that was one of those things that was taught me as a very young audio engineer, and always has stuck with me. Make sure you check your power first. Make sure it's clean. Make sure you're not sharing it with some of those other departments. We all kind of make fun of each other. The lighting and the video and the audio departments all make fun of each other. Yep. But there are reasons why we do what we do, and I'm sure to this date it's still the same way.
Oh yeah, stay off the squint power.
Well, yeah, of course.
Just stay away from the squints. Period.
I know that at one point I've recently started going to, as I'm retired, I started going to what I call the Retired Men's 720 Luncheon, which is at one of the bars here in town. They all hook up, and everyone retired goes there. That's kind of how I found out about your podcast, Craig.
Yeah, I might make it this Wednesday.
Don Toto was telling me that I should do that, and then I remember the story about how he got his job because the guy before him left the lights on and went upstairs for lunch and came back and all the plastic melted on the stage.
Yeah, all the Lexan covered the lights. Yeah, it was all melted. Yeah, that was a whoo-wee.
Yeah, that was. It was expensive, and it stopped the show.
And that, just after they had just fixed all of the redone it.
Yeah. So, things happen. I mean, and it's all live with what we do. I even earlier on in my career, I didn't do this show, but I know a company in town that did. I used to do a lot of shows over at the Hard Rock, the actual restaurant. And when they opened that Hard Rock restaurant, before they built the casino there or the hotel, they did a groundbreaking and they brought a big tent in and they loaded in Aerosmith. And Aerosmith went out there and plugged in. Everyone's ready to go and went, no, 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 no. The breaker went out. So audio department goes back and resets it. Okay, we're ready. They go back out there. No, 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 no. Pop. And it happened like 3 times, and then Aerosmith said, "See you later, we're out of here," and they left. So they never had that grand opening concert. And the reason I started doing the shows over the company I was with, Burns Audio, started doing those shows is because they got fired. They never came back. So I'm not going to mention who or what that was, but someone knows who that is. And anyway, that's how sometimes you get gigs. It's.
Well, it's like that in anything in life. Someone else's screw up and being fired lets you have an opportunity to show what you have, and you either show it or you're going to join out the door. And that's what it's all about. These hotels and stuff, these showrooms and stuff, they are living, breathing entities that have to be taken care of.
Yes.
And no one really gets that point until they've been around it enough, and it's like, they just don't work on their own.
Becoming an audio engineer these days is a pretty daunting task. Being compared to, say, doing studio work, where you really work in a studio with specific stuff. In the live realm, in live sound, audio department's in charge of intercom. Audio department's in charge of wireless microphones. Audio department's in charge of consoles and monitor mixes and speakers and speaker layouts. And there's a whole vast knowledge of experience that comes from doing that. If I was a young man and I was trying to do it to explain it to someone now, learn as much as you can about all of these systems, because when you finally grasp all of them is when you can finally get to the point where you become that guy that people see and knows. I mean, something goes wrong, they call you to fix it,
even video systems, get to learn all that, because you're going to be hooked in with them.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna have to be able to hook in with them and know what's going on with their systems too. You're not gonna have to be, the world's greatest whiz at it.
Something else I learned along my way in my career as I became a mixer and mixed a lot of really big stuff, as X Games progressed over 10 or 12 years, I decided I couldn't evaluate the mix, the speakers, what the audience was hearing, because I was always behind the console. So at some point, I talked my bosses into letting me they called me the audio designer. And I said, well, if I'm the audio designer, let me bring in some people that are experts in these fields, and I can manage them as what you need and make sure that we're delivering an A+ show. Because for me, that's what it's all about. I'm there for one reason and one reason only: to deliver the best quality, best sound that I can for that particular show. I don't care if it's a small company show or a huge giant show. My goal has always been to surround myself with very talented people and do those things. Because I'll be honest, I don't know everything about everything. I would be a superstar if I did that. I mean, I'm just a talented person that got in front of the right people that understand that I'm professional and I can find the solutions for them. And that's kind of how I built my career towards the end. Even with the Red Bull shows, I wasn't mixing those. I hired people to mix them for me. I managed the companies. I figured out how they did. If they didn't do a good job for me, I didn't like the crew, I moved to another company. That's just kind of how it was. And after a while, I know in my career, I've made hundreds of audio engineers and friends, people that I've worked with throughout my career that are still good friends, whether it be Facebook or telephones, that I can still call. And it's a wonderful feeling to see them start off as small engineers mixing small shows and then being now big time. And the most important thing I can say is, is be nice to everybody on your way up, because at some point in life, you'll be on your way down. And when you're on your way down, if you were nice to people on your way up and weren't completely a jerk, you'll continue to still work. and still have friends that will support you or recognize your talents for doing whatever you did over the years.
Absolutely, yeah. It's and I agree with that 100%. You know,
You know, my newest thing right now, like I said, I'm in college learning Pro Tools, and the first thing I'm doing is latching onto my teachers and trying to figure out how I can get a bunch of these students from my college that have graduated, have certificates, and know what they're doing to bring them into the fold of my union that I'm in now, because we need qualified audio engineers. Yeah. And you know, it's hard to get into the union. I know some families have our legacy families, I want to call it, that have been here for years. But some people like myself luck out, meet some right people, get their foot in the door, and then are on their way. And that's all I want to do, is share that with somebody else in life as I get older.
that's a great goal. No, that's how it should be. That's, you know, and when it was done right, the legacy thing, you passed it down to your kids,
Yes.
and they passed it down, so that you were creating this wealth of knowledge that stayed within the hall. We don't have that as much as we used to.
Well, we are, you know, we are a large hall. We have a lot of different venues, a lot of different things. Our union here locally covers a wide variety. It's not just hotel sound. It's hotel sound, convention work, film work.
Yep.
It's all the variety of it, which normally most cities would in back east or even west break that up into multiple unions. So we're very blessed to have that in our union here. But the downside to it is that trying to find the quality people to fill those positions. And once you become that person, and believe me, clients know who they're looking for and what they see.
Oh yeah.
And, you know, showing up on time, being prepared to do your work, keeping your mouth shut, and knowing what you're supposed to know will get you moving up the mountain a lot faster.
Yep. A lot of attitude. You know, have the bright attitude. You know, I've always had a really thick skin, so a lot of the guys, and you know who some of them are, that used to work here, you know, they're a little gruff, they're a little rough to work, but they were so good at their job. Okay, well, I'll put up with your gruff and being, you know, rough around the edges because you're so damn good at your job.
Yeah, that's exactly it. When you recognize talent in any one thing, you're going to surround yourself with that, because you know that that's something you're not good at, but they are really good at. And so having that, like, you know, some of the guys on my team, and we were talking earlier about one of my gentlemen who used to solder my microphones, and he had a difficult time with management, and I did everything I possibly could to keep him in that chair over the years, even to the point of driving him to and from work for many years, to make it so that he would retain that job, because him retaining that job and doing that kind of work for me made me look good. And that's really what it's all about. It's not necessarily me trying to make myself look good. It's me trying to bring up people and make them move forward too, you know? So that's kind of one of the things I hope I leave in this union as a legacy. I've always stuck to what I do best. I've always done audio. I've never branched out, even though I have cards in every position in our union. I've never really branched out because I know my lane, and I've always stuck to it. And I try to avoid the drama and the baloney that goes with it, and just do what I need to move forward and better my career. That's really what it's about.
Yeah. Well, Ed, thanks for coming in.
Well, thanks for having me, Craig. It's been a long time.
It's been
kind
good
of-
to see you again. It's been a long time, and
It's been a while since I've been in the theater, other than coming to a couple shows over the last couple of years. And, you know,
as you walk around backstage, we did a little walk around showing, you know, the little things here and there have changed and stuff like that, and hopefully corrected some of his memories.
I've had nightmares of this theater where I'd be downstairs miking up the crew in the basement, and the show would start, and I'm running in slow motion to try and get up to the console to mix it.
That's pretty funny. But anyways, thanks again. Thanks for coming in, and folks, listen to what he has to say. He had a lot of good information there, and especially this last few minutes here, telling you what to do if you want a career in this business. And a lot of it is attitude and willingness just to work hard, you know, and how much are you willing to put into it is what you're going to get back out of it. So.
Yes, that's exactly true. And I wish everybody well out there to try and better themselves in whatever they're doing. And sometimes it's a hard road, but stick to your guns and follow your dreams. You never know where those will lead you.
Yep. All right, folks. Well, we're going to call that good for the interviews here with Mr. Ed Johnson, and sure do appreciate him being in here and spending a couple hours with us and telling some stories. So until then, the next episodes will be coming out in the next month. All right, until then.
You're listening to It's Showtime, the Craig L. Hayes Show.